This episode of The Construction Record is brought to you by the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association. Clean water is everybody's business.
Hello and welcome to episode 92 of the Construction Record podcast. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me is...
I'm staff writer Russell Hixson.
And I'm Angela Gismondi, staff writer for the Daily Commercial News.
Okay, and it's really disgustingly smoky out here in Vancouver, which I'll get to presently with my story. But first, Russell has some stuff on the go that he'd like to tell us about. So Russell, take it away.
Yeah. I'll let you deal with the smoky stuff. Let's see here. So recently, they released this study that they've been working on for a long time about how to get rapid transit to the North Shore. And Angela, you may not be as familiar with West Coast traffic woes as we are, but anybody who lives in the Lower Mainland knows that kind of North Vancouver, West Vancouver, getting across Burrard Inlet is an absolute nightmare.
It's a pain.
It's just been a bad traffic issue for years and years and years and years. And this is just kind of one of the solutions that they've come up with. Is, you have Lionsgate Bridge, and then you have the Ironworkers Bridge. And that's pretty much it to get to the North Shore, other than maybe taking a ferry. And so they've come up with some options. Two of them are new bridge crossings, and then three of them are tunneling options. And they actually even considered like retrofitting the Ironworkers Bridge, but then they just realized that's just way too expensive and way too much of a headache, and they kind of scrapped that one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're looking at a lot of tunneling, and even one of the tunneling options they're kind of really iffy on, because they would have to completely realign and like redo part of the Canada line. And then they're also waiting to see what happens with the Broadway subway, because that would also factor into what they're going to do and could change ridership data. But these five options, they've kind of pushed ahead and saying, these ones are the most plausible. And even if we're iffy on some of them, we still want to, do a good, thorough study. So they're going to do more engineering, look at the soil and look at ridership levels and patterns. And they're going to come up with like try and whittle that list down and do a more in-depth study. But it looks like, it's probably going to take a really, really long time. But eventually we're going to get another crossing across Burrard Inlet.
And from what I can tell from the map and what I've seen on the news, the cheaper options are also the lengthier ones. Like you have to kind of go around and then back to Lonsdale Quay, which is sort of the main entry point for North Van. If you go directly across from Waterfront Station, which is the way the C-Bus works now, you have to go basically 10 stories underground. So it's a lot more tunneling in that case as opposed to the other, but it's also the most direct route.
I mean, you say cheaper or more expensive, but the reality is they've only done kind of like a cursory, like an initial investigation in these options. So while they suspect that some may be more expensive than others, they need to do a lot more work to see if that's the case.
Okay. And like you said, it's going to take a while for this to come to fruition, if it comes to fruition at all.
Yeah. It's one of those things that people are really excited about. And you saw every mayor come out with their statement saying, this is our biggest issue, traffic going to the North Shore. But it's going to be a long time until this probably happens.
Anybody who's been on the Lionsgate Bridge on rush hour knows exactly what they're talking about, because it's a nightmare.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then my other story that actually broke, well, I don't know if I'd say broke, but that we found out about recently was in this Kaiwit case that we've been tracking for years. There's a worker, Sam Fitzpatrick, and he was killed by a falling rock in 2009 on a site in Powell River. And it's taken many, many years. And there's a criminal case moving forward for negligence. And several people have been charged, including an engineer and the company itself, Kaiwit. And we found out that a former Kaiwit manager who is a U.S. citizen, was arrested in Montana on a warrant. So Canada issued a warrant for him like a year or so ago. But I mean, he lives in Montana. He's a U.S. resident, so they can't just barge in there. and do whatever they want. But they seem to have worked out something with the U.S. law enforcement, and the U.S. law enforcement issued their own warrant a few months ago and went and got him. And he's out on bail right now, but he's going to have a extradition hearing in November, and we'll see what happens. It's kind of up to the U.S. extradition judicial process at this point. So
I hear the benefit of working from home in the background.
The thing is, I have my headphones on. I don't know whose dogs are those. Dogs in my house or whose house?
I think they are. They're not mine. I have no dogs here. Or if I do, I have a real problem.
That's just the symphony of animals that is my home right now, and I consider it like an asset to the podcast.
Authenticity, beloved audience.
It's great. It's gritty. It's rugged. It's guerrilla podcasting. Yeah, so there was a trial scheduled for November, but obviously I think they were waiting to see what happened with the extradition, and of course, coronavirus has kind of thrown the courts into a bit of a tizzy. So I think that they're going to reschedule the trial, and we're not sure when yet, but there is a hearing to kind of set trial dates as well. And as far as I know, Kiewit has said they plan to fight this. And have their day in court. So we will, keep tracking this and see what happens and see if this former manager is extradited for trial.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Okay. As previously mentioned, Vancouver is a miasma of wildfire smoke. None of it is a Canadian source. It's all American wildfires, from what I can tell. But we apparently have the second worst atmosphere in the world, or AQI, Atmospheric Quality Index. And so because of that, I talked to Barry Nakahara. He's a spokesperson at WorkSafeBC about what people can do in construction about that, because they're working outside. They haven't got much choice in the matter. And he said it's a little different for WorkSafe. It's they'll give heat advisories and stuff like that, but this is kind of a little out of nowhere, and it's not controllable by anything. But I asked, and he said a lot of heat stuff also applies to wildfire stuff. Like, if you're working outside, go back into somewhere that's sealed off and has good airflow and has decent HVAC. And also in terms of PPE, which people are already wearing because of COVID, he said surgical masks are no good for smoke particulates. But the N95 masks people are wearing probably anyway are good for that. So that's a plus. But it is, again, it's something, on top of COVID, now people have to deal with, if they're working on a site, they have to deal with this on top of everything else. They've got bad air that they're breathing in, hopefully through a mask whole time. And I asked about flaggers. Flaggers, have to be in this stuff all day, and although presumably they have masks too. And he said, yeah, in that case, hopefully they've got a car that they can, with climate control, that they can take shelter in, for periods of time. So it's not great, and it will clear itself up eventually when it starts raining. But in the meantime, he said also that not just WorkSafeBC, but a lot of other organizations in BC are working together, because this is becoming not just a freak event, but a going concern. This is the kind of thing that happens every year, whether it's from the States or us, because we have big forest fires that drift down to Vancouver as well and into the States. So they are looking at protocols to have in place for this happening again, because it's going to happen again, along with other disasters, thanks to climate change. So yeah, it was interesting. It's also miserable, and I'm hating walking around in it. So there you go.
Wow, Warren, tell us how you really feel.
Bold take. I don't like smoke.
No kidding.
Yeah, it seems like every summer it's just it's like a weather, front. It's like, oh yeah, the smoke's coming in now,
Yeah,
just
I've
about
been
that
to
time
Beijing,
of year.
and it looks as bad. It doesn't smell as bad, but it looks as bad as Beijing. Beijing is all coal and other industrial pollutant as opposed to wood. So that's I don't know which is better, really. They're both bad for you. Anyway, so Angela, you have much nicer stories to tell us about.
Yes. So I wrote a story this week about a neat new development in Etobicoke, which is just outside of Toronto. It's called Reina, and it's led by an all-female design development team, which is really interesting, because what it resulted in is more collaboration, more engagement, and it's a more community-focused development. So they spent a whole year consulting with the public to get feedback on what they want to see in a building, which is, usually it's just consultants behind closed and the developer behind closed doors deciding that kind of stuff. But they really wanted the people who are living there to have input into the building. So it's a really neat building. It's got 25% more amenities than is required, and it's meant for multi-generational families. There's something for all ages, and the architect, Quadrangle, was responsible for the exterior and the interior design. So even the outside, they describe it as soft and light and flowy and feminine. It's like a white brick, and it's quilted, and it's got balconies that wrap around, nice views. So it's a really interesting development, and it'll be really interesting to see it, how it unfolds going forward, and what it turns into.
I would bet temperature and air circulation are definitely paramount here, because I remember reading somewhere that because so many older buildings were designed by men, they took into account how men feel comfortable at a certain temperature, which isn't the same as how comfortable women feel at a certain temperature. So if you've got women in charge of this thing, they will actually account for that, finally.
All sorts of things to take into account. For sure.
I wonder if are they using that as like part of their marketing and selling of the building, is that it had like a lot of input from women and was like kind of a women-led thing? Is that like a part of their marketing strategy?
Oh yeah, it was huge. That's the I think it's one of the first all-female led development teams. So a year ago I did a story when they kicked it off, and I remember getting a picture, and they had all the people that were involved in the project on the site, kind of posed on the site, and it was really neat to see that's the group that's going to be developing this project, and they're all females. And it's actually they did it to get more interest, because the commercial industry, or the residential rental industry, is dominated by men. And so they want to call attention to that, and they want to encourage more women to enter the field as well. So this is how they're doing it.
Yeah. Hopefully people see, more women, out there in front in projects like this, maybe they'll be encouraged to, give it their try as well and enter some of these fields that we just don't see, that many women.
And I'd assume it was from the outset, it was a calculated decision to do this. It wasn't just, or it didn't just organically come together, or maybe it did.
No, it was on purpose, 100% on purpose. They wanted to get an all-female team together to show that, because they said females are usually behind the scenes. So they want to bring them to the forefront and sort of showcase their talents and what they can do. So that's the whole purpose.
Okay. And besides that, you also talked to our esteemed economist, Alex Carrick. So you can give us sort of the bird's eye view of what that interview is all about before we roll into the interview itself. Yes.
So as we know, these days, all of the conferences that are usually taking place in the fall are going online due to the pandemic. So Canada is no different. It's taking place virtually this year, September 29th to October 1st, over 3 days. So I spoke with Alex Carrick, as you mentioned, Warren, who is the chief economist for Construct Connect and Canada. He basically told me that this year's conference is going to focus on 3 main areas: technology, demographics, and economics. And the main focus is going to be technology, because it affects all of those other areas as well. So he talked about how technology has basically saved us during this pandemic, and that allows companies to stay connected and people to stay connected in ways that they never would have thought possible before. So they're going to have a few speakers each day, and they're going to be from Canada and the US, and they'll talk about the usual stuff, trends and new and emerging technology being used in the industry, and the outlook for Canadian construction markets and global construction markets as well. He did say there would be a focus on global markets as well. And as for the networking that people may be missing during events like this, he said there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers, and other opportunities for networking. So I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but they are going to incorporate that into the event. So let's listen to that interview now.
The Construction Record is brought to you by the BC Construction Safety Alliance. Through programs, services, training, and consultations, the BCCSA is making safety simpler. Find out more at bccsa.ca.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela Gismondi. I'm a staff writer with the Daily Commercial News, here with Alex Carrick, who is the chief economist of Construct Connect and Canada, which is Canada's construction forecast conference. This year's event is taking place virtually over 3 days, September 29th to October 1st. Alex, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about this year's theme, the perfect storm.
Yeah, well, it just seems like all kinds of things have fallen on us all at once. I mean, there's political unrest everywhere if you look around the world, and there's climate change issues. I mean, wildfires in California, and you hear about all kinds of other things going on. And then there's the not so small matter of the pandemic. I mean, it seems almost biblical the way things are going. So there's a tremendous. We always say heading into the conference that there's times of uncertainty, but man, I don't think we've ever been in times of uncertainty, anything like this before. So that's how we came up with the theme, basically, the perfect storm.
Great. And so, like you mentioned, due to COVID-19, this year's conference is different than other years. What sets this year's conference apart?
Well, it's going to be over 3 days, and it's going to be virtual. And so we're going to have to try to connect with delegates talking over the internet and so on. But I mean, that seems perfectly appropriate because one of the first day's theme is technology. And technology, to a considerable degree, has saved us under these circumstances. I mean, if you think, if we hadn't had the technological advances that we've had over the last number of years, the economy would be in so much worse shape. I mean, just look at this. We're able to do video conferencing, and then companies are able to manage inventory and their staff and keep in touch with people and everything in ways that were never possible before. So it's exciting. And even on my daily basis, I'm talking to people all over the world, people in South Africa, the United Kingdom, out on the West Coast. I mean, these are really interesting times. So this is what this is. It's an acceleration of innovation, I would say, and I think that the conference is just a natural result of that, a natural evolution. So, yeah.
Perfect. What are some of the benefits and the challenges of a virtual conference?
Well, under the present circumstances, I got to tell you, one of the real benefits is that I think a lot of people are feeling disconnected. It's hard because you're not out and you're not socializing with people and you're not going to the office and so on. So it's hard not to feel disconnected. But with a conference like this, you're able to connect with people, you're able to hear what other people are thinking, and you're able to stay current. I mean, that's the really difficult challenge. Myself, for example, I'm reading a tremendous amount. Because you're not getting the gossip the same way that you do normally. You've got to get on and you've got to read all the media reports that are out there. And this conference it kind of encapsulates that idea. The challenges, of course, are finding the right people and the technology and really hoping that the technology works. So we're spending a lot of time trying to make sure, like having trial runs and practices and so on, to make sure that this goes as smoothly as it possibly can.
That's good. So there are 3 main topic areas that'll be covered over the 3 days: technology, demographics, and economics. Why are each of these significant?
Well, they're all just huge topics right at the moment. As I mentioned to begin with, technology has become hugely important to all of us, and the importance of technology is being shown on the stock markets. I mean, all you got to do is consider the fact that Zoom, the valuation of Zoom, is greater than the valuation of the 4 biggest airlines in the United States. So, I mean, that's just an incredible factoid to me. That seems just incredible. But technology, of course, the subject areas are things that are going to impact construction, like modular construction and wearables drones and so on, IoT devices and so on. So that's one of the topic areas. But technology is also going to be required to come to the help of all of us when you get into topics on the second and third day of the conference. For example, the second day is all about demographics and personal preferences. And demographics relates to the fact that the population is aging. So you got to have technology to make the kind of productivity advances that you want to have. And there's going to be a loss of skilled workers because they're going to be retiring. But then another huge issue that I believe is going to really come to the fore is population growth, because that's really been Canada's secret weapon. We've had tremendous population growth, and a big portion of that was immigration. But now with COVID and lockdowns and so on, immigration isn't as strong as it was before. So, but will it be coming back? That's going to be a key issue. And then all of these things also morph into economic subject areas as well. And so we'll be talking about the outlook for the Canadian and Canadian construction market. But also it'll be interesting to hear, we have two speakers who will be talking on the subject of global economies and global construction markets. So it'll be interesting to hear whether or not other parts of the world will be picking up possibly faster than North America or not. And then deglobalization is a huge issue and what that will mean for Canada. And all of these topics have implications for construction costing. I mean, the technology advances, what that's all about is to bring down costs. But global markets determine things like commodity prices, which are the base of construction materials. So it's all interrelated.
Sounds good. Can you give me a few highlights from the speaker lineup?
What I would say is that Nadia, our conference coordinator, and myself, one of the things that we did do, we sat with all the speakers for each day, and we sat and we talked with them each day separately. So day one speakers, we got on the line with them. Day two speakers, day three speakers, and we had hour-long and in some cases longer sessions than that, going over the topic areas and what they would address. And I have never before experienced as interesting conversations among speakers as this year. Everybody was really engaged in their topic and what they would be talking to us about. They were really good conversations, and everybody mixed well, and the ideas were flowing fast and furious.
So who do you think should be attending this year's event and why? What do you expect people to take away from this?
Well, I think anybody who's interested in construction should really be interested in coming on and hearing what everybody has to say. And I always think that, the audience should be as wide as possible. And I'm inclined to extend it even beyond construction, but we usually end up getting contractors and building product manufacturers and top people with the companies, like the executive suite people. But anybody who's interested in the outlook for construction, because this is a time of extraordinary challenge and extraordinary uncertainty. And I mean, we don't even know what's going to happen with the coronavirus. I mean, that's the whole thing. By the way, I will mention that the proceeds from the conference, a significant portion of the proceeds will be going to COVID relief efforts. So we're not really doing this as a money-making effort this year. It's experimental in that it's virtual, but also it's I'm not going to pretend like we're being altruistic or it's the public service, but there is an element of that to it.
Sounds good. And where can people go to find out more? Website?
Yeah, you can go to the Canada 2020 website and register online. And if you follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, Nadia, our conference coordinator, is always posting information about the conference, and you'll find it there under Construct Connects or DCN _Canada.
Perfect.
So there are links on social media to it, but Google as well. Canada Conference 2020. You might have to go down a couple. It's not necessarily pops up at the top of the list, but it's there. It's there.
Perfect. Great. Anything else, Dad?
No, I don't think so. I just it's gonna be really interesting, and I think it's gonna be fun. And we're keeping our fingers crossed that everything goes smoothly. And I know that everybody has been working very hard behind the scenes, and it's a fabulous lineup of speakers, and it's a lineup of speakers not just from Canada either. We have somebody from the Bank of America, and we've got Microsoft representation, and we've got Graham, who's located in the United Kingdom. He's a global consultant on construction. And then Peter Hall, of course, he speaks on behalf of Export Development Corporation. He travels all over the world. So there certainly is an international component to it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Alex.
Oh, that's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Angela.
This episode of The Construction Record is brought to you by the Greater Toronto Sewer and Water Main Contractors Association. Clean water, our goal, our future.